2 years ago, I promised you this, my own personal Godzilla fan film, the culmination of everything I had learned doing visual effects, filmmaking, and YouTube since I was 9 years old. But I need a release date to keep myself accountable. Considering G-Fest, the biggest Godzilla and Kaiju convention, is happening this summer, there's no better place to premiere my short film, which gives me just about 200 days to create and finish the Godzilla film of my dreams. And what is that dream Godzilla film, you ask? It's very simple. Futuristic samurai versus Godzilla. Now for this video, I'm simply going to make a quick proof of concept, showing a preview of the final product and the quality I'm trying to deliver. I wanted to get this first video out by Christmas, which gives me just about 6 weeks to get this video made, and therefore no time to spare. To make this, the first thing we need, like always, is a 3D model, namely of Godzilla. Now, being the Godzilla guy, I already have a lot of models at my disposal, but I don't want to use any of these designs. I want my own. So what does Film Course Godzilla look like? Well, this is going to be a radically different take on Godzilla and his mythos, taking him out of modern sci-fi and putting him squarely into the fantasy genre. I didn't want an irradiated lost dinosaur like in previous continuities. It personally never made sense to me why there was only one surviving member of the species living today and nothing else, but I digress. Instead, this is the ancient Shinto god Ryujin, the god of the sea, rain, and thunder. Typically a benevolent god and protector of the Japanese people, the atomic bomb of World War II has corrupted and transformed him into the monstrous entity known as Godzilla. His purpose is simple and absolute: to stop all industrialization and human progress, ensuring that no power on Earth can ever give rise to such a weapon again. I didn't want the typical Godzilla design for this. I wanted something much more serpentine and fantastical. The idea should be of a typical Japanese dragon, but whose limbs and spines, due to the radiation, have grown and mutated to make him into something truly monstrous. This is the Godzilla I have chosen to bring to life. Once I had my finished design, I opened up Blender and started sculpting. First, it's about getting the overall shapes down and making sure the proportions and anatomy are exactly how I want them. A major part of being a good artist is understanding form and function, which is why studying anatomy is so important. You have to know how things connect and work together. Once I had this base sculpt, it was time for the high fidelity sculpt. Except, and this is something that I never cover on this channel, I first had to do what is called the retopology. You see, I sculpted in Blender using what's called dynamic topology, which just means the computer adds in resolution to my model as needed. But this leaves me with a really ugly mesh that is not usable for animation. So I need to have a simplified and prettier version of the mesh that is usable for animation and all the stuff I need to do with it. There are automated tools to do this for you, but those come with their own set of problems. So I opted to do manual retopology instead. And the reason why I never go over this step on this channel is because it's the most boring, tedious, and torturous thing to do. You have to go over your entire model and worry about proper polygon flow and blah 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 blah. But it does give you better results, to be fair. I decided to devote 1 or 2 days to this, which quickly became 5, and was in no way how I was wanting to be spending the little amount of time I had. You see, designing him took longer than I wanted, which I won't complain about, since getting his design right was a non-negotiable. You don't want your monster in your monster movie to look lame. But it ended up meaning I only had about a week and a bit left to do the rest. But alas, I finished retopology, and man, it's sexy. Just look at that polygon flow. Beautiful. Now guys, doing all this can be quite draining, and sometimes a young boy just needs to sit back and watch a lot of YouTube, and there's no better browser for that than Opera, as it has some of the best video focus features of any browser out there. I can use the video pop-out feature to detach and move any video I'm watching to any part of my screen. Do I need more room? Great, I can move it somewhere else, and I can even use it outside the browser. There are no extra apps or windows needed, and if I'm watching a video I want to keep my eyes on, but I also want to keep browsing in another tab, I can do it thanks to Opera's split screen. I can just drag one tab downwards and boom, 2 clean windows. No need to switch tabs back and forth. And I can just click the 3 dots at the top of the dividing bar to exit, and their built-in ad blocker lets me enjoy uninterrupted videos whenever I want and have complete control over what is shown to me, removing ads for a faster browser and uninterrupted playback. And while I make sure my videos are in crispy 4K, many older classics are forever stuck in 240p. But with Opera's Lucid mode, I can instantly upscale any video I'm watching, and it's completely free. Just use my link down below, and thanks to Opera for sponsoring this video. I could then bring him into ZBrush and again start sculpting. I always start with the big shapes first, making sure the musculature is correct and the proportions are right. It was now time for his scales. And it's funny, but I probably spent close to a day just trying to find the right scale brush. I tried many out, but finally it was this one, with jagged, broken, overlapping scales that I found was the right choice. It really made him look fish-like, but like an ugly ancient fish that's lived in the bottom of the ocean for centuries or millennia. It was then a long process of covering his entire body in these scales. I'm also adding big old gills to him because the design wouldn't make sense without them. And personally, I'm in the Godzilla Needs Gills club. Once I had something I was happy with and he was sufficiently detailed, and by sufficiently I mean 50 million polygons, I could export all this detail into a normal map. And it was now time for paint. And honestly, I didn't quite have the best idea of what I wanted for his paint job when I got to this stage, but I simply opted to refer back to the original idea, which was of Ryujin, and chose to follow this ancient artwork. I started with a grayish blue base, then built up the scales and added red and yellow. I again liked how it anchors back to sea serpents, which have these bright colors as they're heavily venomous. Although a heavily colorful Godzilla kind of goes against what I'm trying to do. So I made sure to subdue these colors a lot and make them not too noticeable. I textured his mouth, claws, and spines and made sure to draw out a subsurface scattering map.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Once I was happy with this, I could export all his textures, made sure everything looked good, then rigged him up. I just reused my rig from my Grizzly the T-Rex model because it's easier than starting from scratch. It also meant I could simply reuse this cool foot rig I made, which allows me to not have to animate the toes at all. It was now time for shape keys, which are just slight edits of the model which can be animated as needed. I gave him a snarl as well as control to have his lips and gills shake and quiver when he's roaring. And I also gave him the ability to breathe. I kind of wanted to give him the white soulless eyes of GMK and Always Sunset Godzilla, which I love, but I didn't think it was right for this version. Instead, I opted for a more reptilian pupil to achieve the same non-human look and feeling that I liked from the white eyes. I tested the rig like I always do, and it was now ready for animation. But exactly what am I going to animate? Well, I initially had a very short sequence planned out that I was going to storyboard then animate, but everything else took way longer than I wanted, and by this point I had pretty much run out of time, and I only had about a day or two to finish this animation. So instead, I'm only going to do one shot, a quick test of the model and something indicative of what I want the final thing to look like. So I once again went to don my motion capture suit, but had to put it away as Xsense discontinued the old software, which meant I wouldn't be able to export any movement that I recorded. And it was the weekend, so I didn't respond to my email asking about the new software. I quickly tried using Rococo's AI motion capture tools, but I kept getting an error, probably because I didn't have a clean background and my dog kept getting in the shot. Also, animating it from scratch was out of the question, as it would take me at least a day, and I really only had a few hours. I then remembered that I had a bunch of saved motion capture files from my last Godzilla video, so I could just use one of those. And the best candidate was undoubtedly 2014. Not just because the movie is still arguably the strongest in terms of overall visuals, but because his slow, powerful movements is exactly how I want my Godzilla to move. I brought in the motion capture file, retargeted to my model.
Oh my god, nobody look! Nobody look!
Then, with the power of editing and patience, I was able to fix it up and get something that I liked. I really tried to make his long neck sway and coil like a snake, and I liked his arms staying down by his side, instead of the traditional Godzilla hands. It's almost like he's ready to just pick you up and eat you. I animated his shake as he roars, made his tongue go and also made sure he snarls when needed. Something I forgot to mention, I also gave him this nictitating membrane, as most reptiles have them and would come in handy for an aquatic creature. I simply animated using only two shape keys, one for opening and closing and another to stop it from clipping, as an eye is not a perfect sphere and needs this fix. If you know a better way to animate a nictitating membrane, please tell me below, because I don't know how to do it. Once I had this, it was time for dynamics and our best friend, Wigglebones. This is not only how I do the tail, because I'm not going to animate that by hand, but how I add in some secondary motion, like thigh shake, and in this case, some slight shake to the spines, as I gave them each their own bone. And with this, the animation was finished. It was now time to bring it into Unreal Engine to do the scene build and get our final image. So I ported over everything and set up the models to look as sexy as possible. But before we continue, I first have to get an integral part of the animation: smoke. Personally, why I think Godzilla 2014 looks so great is because of the amount of smoke, haze, and elements NPC added into it. It really helps ingrain the CG character into its surroundings and the shot. And not having this element of atmosphere is what can make some 3D animations look lacking. So I opened up Embergen, which is a tool for making smoke and fire, created some lingering ground fog, brought in my model and animation, and set it up as a collider so the smoke interacts and is moved around by Godzilla. I then exported it as a VDB and brought it into Unreal Engine. It was then simply a process of coming up with a camera move and building a scene that was fitting for my Godzilla. And that scene was of an ancient Japanese city. I used a bunch of assets from Cargo and layered them in front. I really tried to build depth into the image, but once I was happy with this, I could hit render. I exported a depth pass as well as the camera movement and brought everything into After Effects for compositing. I added in some more atmosphere and lingering fog, as well as some birds flying in the distance. But by far the most important part was taking this from a clean CGI render and adding in a bunch of camera artifacts to make it look like this was something that was photographed, not rendered. I could then bring it in for sound mixing. Now, for the roar, I'm going to use one from the Millennium Saga, but I'll probably end up trying to make my own roar for the final thing. And now, with the sound mix finished and with everything else out of the way, this is the first look at Godzilla Shogun. Now guys, nothing here is finalized and will change considerably by the time G-Fest rolls around this summer. It was just a quick proof of concept after all. And I want to give you guys full disclosure. Making fan films is always tricky, as it is, at the end of the day, creating something for a property and character that you do not own. My dream is for Toho to see the potential in this project and officially endorse it as they did with the Gemstone Godzilla. This would also allow me to invest the resources needed to see this through properly. However, if the bill comes in way too high, the only way forward might be to change this into a wholly original short film with no connection to Godzilla whatsoever, other than its roots in inspiration. But let's worry about that when the time comes. For now, let me know what you thought of this little teaser and what you want to see more of. Like, comment, and subscribe, and check out this video where I remade the intro from Godzilla Save the Earth with modern visual effects. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you again very soon.